The courtroom buzzed with quiet tension, the air thick with anticipation. Dark wood-paneled walls loomed around a sea of rigid faces, defendants, attorneys, and spectators alike sitting under the weight of justice's gaze. At the heart of it all, Judge Marcus Wright, a respected figure with years on the bench, maintained his poised demeanor behind the elevated platform. His robes cascaded down his form, a silent testament to both authority and fairness. To his left, a white police officer stood stiffly, arms crossed over his chest, his expression hard with defiance. Officer Cole Henderson had built a reputation for his aggressive enforcement style, though accusations of prejudice and excessive force had followed him like shadows. Today, those shadows seemed to step into the light. Henderson's tone was clipped and dismissive as he responded to questions. His eyes barely lifted to meet Judge Wright's steady gaze. The tension escalated when Henderson, impatience seeping into his voice, interrupted the judge mid-sentence. "Well, with all due respect, I don't see how this line of questioning is even necessary," Henderson sneered. "Isn't this whole thing just procedural?" A sharp collective inhale swept the room. Even seasoned lawyers shifted in their seats, unsure whether to lean into disbelief or restraint. Judge Wright, however, remained impassive, his dark eyes never wavering from Henderson's face. "Excuse me, Officer Henderson." Wright's voice was calm but firm, reverberating through the room. "Are you questioning this court's process?" "I'm just saying," Henderson pressed. "It seems like a waste of time. Some things are just, how should I put it, self-explanatory." Eyes darted between judge and officer. The implications behind Henderson's words did not go unnoticed. The unspoken assertion lingered heavily in the room. "I don't need to explain myself to you." Judge Wright exhaled slowly, his measured composure intact. "Officer Henderson, in this courtroom, respect is not an option. It's a requirement. You may carry your authority on the street, but in here, I am the authority. Do I make myself clear?" Silence pressed on the room, thick and palpable. Henderson's lips twitched in a half-smile, yet the defiance in his posture remained. Wright's voice softened, though it lost none of its command. "We are all accountable to the same laws, Officer Henderson. No uniform, badge, or position excuses anyone from respecting this court or the principles it stands for." Somewhere in the gallery, a murmur of approval rippled. Wright's words transcended the moment, addressing more than just the officer before him. They echoed into the far reaches of societal discourse, calling out arrogance, demanding respect, and reminding everyone that justice does not bow to ego or prejudice. As Wright continued, his voice grew steadier. "The rule of law exists to protect and to serve equally. That principle is not up for debate." Henderson's expression faltered briefly, though he masked it with a scowl. "I wasn't trying to be disrespectful, Your Honor." Judge Wright didn't flinch. "Your intentions aside, your words speak volumes. You have a duty to uphold the very respect and fairness that your tone undermines." A pause lingered in the air, thick with tension. Henderson shifted his weight, visibly uncomfortable but unwilling to fully yield. The eyes of the courtroom bore into him. A collective demand for accountability hung between the benches and podiums. Judge Wright took a steadying breath. "This isn't just about words spoken in this room, Officer Henderson. This is about what those words represent outside of it. Every choice you make as an officer reflects on justice itself. When you dismiss the process, you dismiss the trust people are supposed to have in you and this system. Is that what you stand for?" The officer's jaw clenched, a flicker of realization dawning on his face. He stood speechless for a moment as Judge Wright leaned forward slightly, voice softer now, but still unyielding. "Accountability isn't a weakness, it's a strength. Owning our mistakes, showing respect even when it's difficult. That's how we build the trust this badge demands. You may see this as just another day in court, Officer Henderson, but I assure you, what happens here matters far beyond these walls." A stillness settled over the courtroom, a reflection of the gravity of Wright's words. Even the faint creak of shifting chairs had ceased as every ear strained to catch every syllable. No one moved, not even Henderson, whose confrontational demeanor had all but evaporated under the weight of Wright's calm authority. The judge straightened, his tone resolute. "We're done with posturing. The facts and respect for this process will determine the outcome, not pride or defensiveness." In that moment, Wright's words transcended the immediate case, touching on a deeper truth about dignity, power, and responsibility. They became a quiet call for reflection, not just for Henderson, but for every person in the room. "Do you understand, Officer Henderson?" Wright asked firmly. Henderson swallowed hard. "Yes, Your Honor," he replied, his voice quieter but steady. For the first time that day, there was no trace of arrogance in his demeanor. Judge Wright gave a curt nod. "Let's proceed." The courtroom exhaled collectively, the tension dissolving into a subdued but palpable sense of respect. Spectators, once skeptical of justice being served, felt something shift, not just within the walls of the courtroom, but perhaps in the mindset of one man representing the larger system. As the case resumed, the gravity of the judge's words lingered, a powerful reminder of accountability and the unwavering pursuit of justice. The hearing resumed, but the courtroom's atmosphere remained changed, quieter, more introspective. Every question posed by the attorneys, every word spoken by witnesses, now carried a weight infused by Judge Wright's earlier admonition. The significance of the moment had not been lost on those present, especially not Officer Henderson. As the case unfolded, it became clear that the testimony of Henderson was pivotal. Allegations of misconduct during a recent arrest were at the center of the dispute, and Wright's line of questioning had sought to reveal not just facts, but attitudes driving Henderson's actions. The issue extended beyond one incident. It touched on broader societal questions of systemic bias and accountability. One by one, witnesses took the stand, recounting their perspectives on what transpired during the arrest. Tension flickered as conflicting accounts emerged, some defending Henderson's conduct as necessary force, others painting it as excessive and racially motivated. Each testimony seemed to add a new layer of complexity, pushing the courtroom deeper into a search for truth. Wright listened carefully, his focus unwavering. But beneath the surface, his thoughts drifted to the larger implications of what was unfolding. This wasn't just about one officer or one case. It was about confronting uncomfortable realities and guiding the system toward a higher standard of justice. As Henderson returned to the stand for further questioning, the shift in his demeanor was noticeable. Gone was the earlier defensiveness. In its place was a more measured presence. His responses, while still firm, carried a hint of humility absent before. "Officer Henderson," the opposing attorney began, "in your opinion, what justifies the level of force you used in that situation?" Henderson hesitated briefly. "I believe the situation required immediate control to prevent harm, sir. My intention was to ensure safety. And do you believe your actions reflected a respect for the individuals involved?" A flicker of unease crossed Henderson's face. "I acted according to my training," he said carefully. "But I'll admit, looking back, I could have handled things differently." The courtroom murmured. Wright observed silently, his expression unreadable. The hint of accountability in Henderson's words was small but significant, a seed planted in soil ready for growth. Moments of tension continued to surface as testimonies and cross-examinations revealed gaps in understanding between law enforcement practices and community expectations. Yet amidst the challenges, a sense of discovery also emerged, a slow unraveling of the complexities surrounding authority and accountability. The case began to shift from being a singular investigation of actions taken on one fateful day to a broader examination of systemic issues. Community advocates and legal experts weighed in, offering perspectives that added depth to the unfolding narrative. Solutions didn't come easily, but questions began to crystallize into actionable insights. Judge Wright guided the proceedings with meticulous care, ensuring that voices were heard and biases challenged. He became more than an adjudicator. He was a shepherd of transformation, leading those in the courtroom toward a deeper understanding of justice. The courtroom proceeded methodically, each moment inching closer to clarity. Witnesses concluded their testimonies, and arguments were made by attorneys from both sides. The case, once steeped in tension and hostility, now leaned toward resolution, thanks in large part to Judge Wright's steady guidance. As the final arguments wrapped up, the room quieted once more, awaiting Wright's ruling. The judge sat in contemplative silence for a long moment before beginning. This case, he stated evenly, has brought forward more than just questions about the specific incident we've examined today. It has illuminated broader concerns about respect, accountability, and how authority is exercised in ways that impact lives and communities. His gaze moved deliberately across the room, settling briefly on Henderson. Officer Henderson, Wright continued, you represent more than just yourself. You wear a badge that symbolizes trust and responsibility. The community must believe that trust is earned, not simply bestowed by virtue of a uniform. Henderson nodded silently, his earlier defiance gone. His posture reflected a man reckoning with hard truths. Wright's tone softened slightly. But accountability isn't just for officers. It's a standard this courtroom holds for everyone, regardless of race, status, or profession. Upholding fairness and dignity isn't a one-sided effort. It's a collective responsibility. He shifted to address the courtroom at large. The pursuit of justice demands that we confront not only individual actions, but also the systems that shape them. When accountability is paired with humility and growth, real change becomes possible. That is the challenge before us. With those words, the ruling was delivered, measured, and fair. Wright's decision addressed both the immediate facts of the case and the larger call for reform in law enforcement practices. He ordered disciplinary action for Henderson, tempered by mandatory retraining and community engagement initiatives aimed at fostering better understanding between police and the public they serve. The room absorbed the decision quietly, the weight of the judge's message lingering. Though some expected harsher punishment for Henderson, Wright's approach carried deeper meaning. A message that justice must not only be corrective but also transformative. The silence was broken as the gavel struck, signaling the end of proceedings. People began filing out, conversations hushed but reflective. Henderson lingered momentarily at the defense table before standing and walking toward the exit. His steps were measured, contemplative, suggesting a man stepping cautiously into a new chapter, uncertain but open to change. Wright remained seated, his gaze distant. The case had concluded, but the work of justice was far from done. The judge knew that true transformation wasn't defined by the end of a single trial, but by the conversations and actions it inspired beyond the courtroom. Weeks later, a ripple effect became apparent. News of the case sparked dialogues across law enforcement agencies about bias and respect. Community forums emerged, fostering dialogue between officers and residents. And Henderson, once resistant to change, became an advocate for reform within his department, speaking openly about lessons learned and pushing for more empathetic engagement with the public. In interviews, Henderson admitted, that day in court was a wake-up call. I realized that authority without accountability isn't strength, it's weakness. What Judge Wright said will stay with me for the rest of my career. Judge Wright's courtroom encounter had become more than a legal proceeding. It was a catalyst for introspection and transformation, not just for one man, but for an entire community grappling with the complexities of justice. As the years passed, Wright often reflected on that pivotal case. It stood as a testament to the power of truth spoken with dignity and the unyielding pursuit of fairness. Justice had found its voice that day, not through punishment alone, but through a call to accountability, understanding, and change. And in that courtroom, justice had not only been served, it had also been restored. Weeks turned to months, but the echoes of that courtroom exchange between Judge Wright and Officer Henderson continued to reverberate. The case had sparked a broader conversation, both within the police department and the community it served. Forums for open discussion flourished, driven by a shared desire to mend fractured relationships between law enforcement and the public. Henderson's transformation from a symbol of defiance to an advocate for respectful policing became a focal point of these changes. In one community meeting, his candid acknowledgement of past errors surprised many. I didn't see it before, he admitted. I thought respect was something owed to me because of my uniform. Judge Wright showed me that respect is earned, and it starts with how we treat others, no matter who they are. His words resonated deeply, becoming a beacon of hope for other officers struggling with similar realizations. Henderson's journey symbolized the possibility of change, not only for individuals but for systems entrenched in outdated mindsets. Judge Wright, too, observed the growing momentum for reform with quiet satisfaction. He remained resolute in his belief that the pursuit of justice was an evolving journey, one where progress could be slow but meaningful if guided by empathy and integrity. Sitting in chambers one afternoon, Wright received a letter that would stay with him for years. It was from Henderson. "Your Honor, that day in court changed my life. It forced me to confront truths I had long ignored. I've learned that humility doesn't weaken authority. It strengthens it. Because of you, I'm trying to do better, not just as an officer, but as a person. Thank you for showing me that accountability can be transformative." Wright folded the letter and placed it in his desk drawer. The road to justice, he knew, was long and winding, but every step mattered. As the years unfolded, reforms born from that courtroom encounter continued to shape the community. Officers underwent new training programs that emphasized empathy, communication, and accountability. Relationships between law enforcement and residents slowly began to mend, built on the foundations of mutual respect. Wright often reflected on those moments, not with pride, but with a deep sense of responsibility. His role had been to ensure fairness, but the impact had gone far beyond the confines of his courtroom. The echoes of that day had rippled outward, proving that even in moments of confrontation, there could be seeds of transformation. One evening, as the sun set behind the courthouse, casting golden light across its facade, Wright stood quietly by his office window. His gaze lingered on the bustling street below, people moving, growing, evolving. Justice was never a fixed point, but a continuous journey fueled by courage, accountability, and grace. That day in court had taught him and everyone present a vital truth. When dignity leads and accountability follows, change is not only possible, it's inevitable.